The category is What the Trans, Darling?
Well, hello, and welcome to What the Trans.
What the Trans? Yes, indeed. We are back once again. Fun times. How are you?
I'm doing well, it's a lovely Saturday afternoon. We've had some fun with some podcasting on Who the Trans.
Yes, I spotted that. So what's Who the Trans when it's at home?
Who the Trans? Well, you might see the words What the Trans and think, Who the Trans? Is this some kind of spin-off that no one knows about? We tried Why the Trans as the philosophical alternative to an Abigail Thorne scenario, but this one is Who the Trans, and this time it's covering Doctor Who.
Yeah.
And what Doctor Who, you may ask, and that is the new Doctor Who specials of the 60th anniversaries.
Yes, indeed. One of which is taking place shortly after we finish recording.
Oh, indeed. I'm just watching the clock going, can I watch Doctor Who yet?
Can I watch Doctor Who yet? But yes, so Alyx and Ben have made a whole nother podcast just talking about Doctor Who. And this podcast will be out in a few weeks' time, but if you're one of our Patreon subscribers, it's out already. So if you really want to hear that, if you really want to hear the opinions of a couple of awesome queer people about the new season, well, the new episode of Doctor Who, then that's the place to do it. So if you want to catch up with that, please check us out on Patreon. If you'd be so kind, thank you very much, please.
Oh, indeed. It's going to be a whole load of fun. We're going to be reviewing Doctor Who, and it's just going to be one hell of a time. Yeah. How have you been today on this Saturday?
Well, yeah, I've had a nice Saturday. I just met my family for a nice lunch, so I had quite a lot of food and at least one glass of wine. So, but they had to give me the gluten-free menu because over the last couple of weeks, it basically turns out I might have celiac disease, which is another autoimmune condition. So I'm really collecting those right now.
Pokemon cards.
Yeah, definitely, although I don't want to catch them all. Yeah, I've been having all sorts of problems with my digestive system and the things related to it. No one wants to listen to me talk about my waste disposal.
Gory details.
Yeah, waste disposal systems, let's say. No one wants to hear me talk about that, so I won't. But, just generally some problems there. But going gluten-free, as I did quite recently, has made a difference, which is pretty great, right up until yesterday when I completely forgot about it and I had a burger at KFC.
Oh, because that was one hell of a story, because you were having a bit of a scan.
I was having a scan.
You really couldn't eat.
Yeah, I was having a scan on my stomach because of all of this stuff that's been going on, and I had to not eat anything for 6 hours beforehand, so I had to get up and have breakfast by 7:30. Just went back to bed afterwards, obviously, but I had to get up early and eat breakfast and then not eat anything else until I was finished with the scan. And the first thing I thought was, there's a KFC between here and the tram stop. I'll go and get one of those. And I just completely brain farted on it, stupidly. So yes, due to my own silliness, I am experiencing some symptoms again. Which is no fun whatsoever. But yes, today's food was lovely. We haven't got our Christmas decorations up yet. And that's okay. I'm fine with that. We'll get them up as soon as we repaint all the Halloween decorations to be like sparkly and green rather than orange and purple.
From spooky to happy. I was about to say it was like a word with S that's also happy. I think I've been quite the opposite, haven't I? I've sort of
seasonal? From spooky to seasonal, but then seasonal can apply at any time of year depending on, it depends on the context.
Context indeed. So yeah, I've sort of been the polar opposite. I've already put my Christmas decorations up today. If you check my Twitter, you'll see some really adorable pictures of my kittens, Jim and Rosie. Lately, I've already had 2 cats climb into the Christmas tree already, causing absolute chaos. And it's been one hell of a chaotic but hilarious time.
Indeed. Christmas with cats. Chaotic but hilarious is the phrase that I would associate with it. I think quite a lot of friends. Obviously, I'm a queer person. Most of my friends have cats, so.
Oh, it is inevitable.
It is. And another thing to mention is, for one reason and another, well, we were looking at something for the meet, for the sort of main second section of the show that we do. There isn't one of those this time, and I hold my hand up. That's my responsibility. That's because I haven't been well, partly. But also, nailing it all down seemed very elusive, and I didn't want to go off all half-cocked, so this time we're just talking about the news, but I promise next time we'll be back with something bigger and betterer.
Well, I suppose it was quite a complex story to work on with all the stuff that I saw there, so I don't blame you on that one. And
Indeed, but I just... I always worry, I'm going to let the listeners down, or I feel like standards have been set and I must adhere to them forever, but we'd actually much rather put something out regularly and accurately rather than constantly delaying it for no reason, or for saying, it'll be fine, we'll just put it out on Wednesday or whatever. It's like, let's keep to the schedule we've set, even if it means occasionally we'll do a shorter episode. And again, health stuff has gotten in the way here, so I do apologise for that, but also there are parts of it where, it's not wholly my fault, let's say.
Yeah, it's sort of, you've got to take your health first, really, on this one.
I mean, that's the idea.
Yeah, sustainability is, I think, a thing we're starting to strive for more when it comes to these podcasts. And in a way, with this podcast being a little bit shorter, that means that instead of only having half of it during your commute, you might have this just in one whole commute, so it fits your day even nicer. So from the time you get out your door, you can put the podcast on, and then when you arrive back in to the office or at your workstation, it then ends just as you sit down or something, like a movie.
Yeah, fingers crossed. We hope this is suitable for the commuter in all of us. But equally, don't feel too bad if you don't have a commute, because I don't. My commute is from my bed to my desk, and sometimes it's still too difficult. Anyway, let's stop wittering about this and get on with what we're pulling in the big bucks for. Yeah, that's not what's happening, is it?
What you're all tuning in for.
Yes, that's a better way of phrasing it. So yes, we'll crack on, and we're just going to start with a quick note. I'm sure our listeners in the UK will be aware of this, but the trial of the two teenagers accused of the murder of Brianna Ghey has begun, and that is more or less all we should say about it. While the court case is still ongoing, it's better that we hold off on any further speculation or comment, lest we be, justifiably be accused of prejudicing the outcome. The case has started on Monday the 20th, and when it's over, we hope to have someone more experienced in legal matters than we are to talk through it, but until then, that's as far as we're prepared to go. And with that said, over to you, Alyx.
Oh, indeed, but we're not running away from legal matters entirely, because we've got another legal case that we're going to talk about, but this time a bit more further up north. But this case,
a little colder.
Well, you could say that. So, 4 women in Scotland are up to their legal antics again and spending their money, not helping women, but in a fruitless exercise akin to running at a wall head first, forgetting the impact and doing it over and over again. The wall they are running into was trying to argue to the Scottish Court of Sessions that a woman with a gender recognition certificate shouldn't be considered a woman in law. The judge disagreed and ruled that a woman with a GRC is legally a woman in law and is protected under the protections of the protected characteristic of sex. We'll make a drinking game out of the amount of times we say protected, but there we go.
Yeah.
There we go. 4 Women Scotland argued that the gender recognition reform of 2004 was redundant and merely symbolic and far-reaching. According to the judge ruled that the arguments were a stupid idea and pointed to numerous cases after the Gender Recognition Act was passed where it was ruled that a woman with a GRC is protected under the characteristic of sex, and even pointed out that the intention of the Gender Recognition Act was to get rid of a strict definition. Alongside that, when EHRC was brought up, and when 4 Women Scotland mentioned that the chair of EHRC recommended to define sex as biological sex, it got a thrashing in law. A quote in a judgment included saying that there is no such thing as being legally lesbian, which will probably tell you enough about that one. But in the end of all this, the end result could be strongly compared to shooting themselves in the foot. The ruling itself is the definition of woman also includes a trans woman of a GRC, the complete opposite of what 4 Women Scotland sued for originally.
Well done.
Indeed, yes, well done on them for fucking up. But it's their loss is our victory. Another man's rubbish is another man's treasure, or something along those lines. But with his treasure, it is now binding in all of the courts in Scotland and will be very influential in the rest of the UK in the inevitable cases that come. By looking at their response, they've now said they won't appeal a decision in a Supreme Court, but now their strategy is crying to anti-trans wanker-in-chief Rishi Sunak, pitifully begging them to introduce secondary legislation into Parliament to implement their intended outcome of the case into law.
And how's that going for them, I wonder?
Oh boy, because that one's a weird one, isn't it, on that front?
Yeah, I mean, ostensibly he'd go for it, but also he must be aware that the courts would not take kindly to that and would basically force him to stop, you know.
Oh, exactly. So when it comes to the introducing secondary legislation, there's also this will they, won't they, with the fact that when it comes to the time they have to pass bills now, they've only got a year, which is making the government considerably less able to pass things in general. And there's some people saying there's not enough time to pass this legislation. There's that whole will they, won't they as well with that, isn't there?
Yeah, I agree. It's crazy that they described it as redundant and merely symbolic, but also far-reaching. It kind of seems like those are mutually exclusive.
Yeah, exactly.
If it's far-reaching, it's not redundant, surely.
Yeah, that is a good point as well, because it's like, it does a lot, but it doesn't do a lot at the same time. It's a catch-22.
Pretty much, yeah. So they're trying to, say, oh, well, this thing's far-reaching and you have to throw it out, but also this thing is redundant and we don't need it, and that's why you need to throw it out. It's like you're making two different arguments, which I'm led to understand the legal profession does not take kindly.
Yeah, exactly. And the lack of limited application when they said that was based, to me, just looks like them saying, "Oh, we can't use this to discriminate against you. We just want another way to discriminate, and this could be a way." But apparently,
yeah, the straws are being clutched at, I feel.
Yeah, straws/pearls/ whatever. Your accessory of choices on that one, isn't it?
Whatever you feel the need to clutch, that's what they're doing. Yeah, I thought this was hilarious when I first saw it, really, because they went to court to prove one thing and instead ended up proving the opposite thing as far as the legal profession is concerned. Well, in Scotland specifically. Again, Scotland getting it right where England is just taking so many steps back.
Oh, exactly. It's like that Looney Tunes logic thing of someone holding a gun and then someone either bends the barrel to face the other person or stick their finger in just as they fire the thing and it ends up blowing up in their faces. Yeah. I've got too many of these metaphors for it.
You're just trying to fire them all out without it becoming tired. But, there's plenty of other groups that you can describe as shooting themselves in the foot. I know you said it, but I've not said it yet, so, it's okay for me to do it. Yeah, it's like shooting yourself in the foot. In this case, going to court to prove a thing and the opposite thing being proved is like shooting yourself in the foot, but by using like a howitzer or something, where it doesn't just, neatly take off the toes. It's
blows your old bloody leg off.
Yeah. Pretty much. So, nice hand cannon. And it's their obsession with GRCs as well, though. It's not like those are a form of ID.
Oh, exactly. It's basically just a marker to tell people that your legal sex can be changed in paperwork. You don't just flash it, like, in a toilet as, like, some girl or guy pass. As you know from the European Court of Human Rights, there's a whole thing about that. What was that, the privacy or something?
It was found to interfere with the right to privacy under, the Human Rights Act for Europe, maybe?
This is a pop test now, just to see if Ash can remember her human rights.
Yeah, oh God, don't ask me to remember stuff. Are you kidding? Like, I've got MS, I can't remember which side of the bed's mine sometimes. But you are right, that has brought them into conflict with the European Court of Human Rights. But then there's going to be part of this movement, these groups of people who want to be able to come into conflict with the European Court on Human Rights so they can then show publicly how little they care. Well, we're not in Europe, so your laws don't apply to us. Nah.
Oh God, yeah, because that's that whole thing of like, Now, first there's Rwanda, and they're probably trying to make their own version of that for trans people. As if, I don't even have to say as if for a specific thing. We just have to say their version of Rwanda, and that pretty much says all about what kind of intent they'd have if they brought it to the European Court of Human Rights for that reason.
Yeah, exactly. And I just think it's hilarious that so many of their arguments were examined in court and just found to be, no, this is rubbish. Take it away and do it again. And I hope the people who were, arguing the case on behalf of 4 Women Scotland, I hope they got paid in advance.
Indeed, it's not like a no-win, no-fee situation.
Yeah, exactly. Anyway.
Yeah, I suppose there was a bit of an interesting detail as well with some of those defunct arguments as well. One particularly stuck out for a particular reason, wasn't it? EHRC.
Yes, indeed. No, I figured it was the EHRC.
Sorry.
Why are we whispering?
I don't know.
No, you're quite right, because the EHRC were mentioned in the case along with their letter to Kemi Badenoch and that whole legally lesbian section. And speaking of the EHRC...
Yeah, also because despite also having a blasting in the Court of Sessions in Scotland, they might potentially have another blasting coming up very soon.
Yay!
Yes, indeed. Oh, it's going to be so good. I mean, I'll tell you in a second, but essentially, the investigation to the EHRC's chair has been suspended, and despite the EHRC's A grade being upheld in October last year, and despite their recommendations to the government to change the definition of sex in the Equality Act, also baffling the UN expert Victor Madrigal-Borloz, the EHRC are still here. But in a recent twist this week, the EHRC is to have their A grade put under special review. This was a year after Ganry gave it a set of recommendations, which, as we have seen, has not been implemented. This has certainly frightened the EHRC, including making Kishwa Faulkner write a whole piece in a Telegraph, and in it state that LGBT orgs weren't engaging with us to discuss our proposals, which, from what we hear, is a gigantic lie. Just completely the opposite. So, in response, Stonewall, in a statement, said, "We hope that this special review will give the EHRC the scrutiny and recommendations it needs to play the part our communities deserve." When it was originally prompted to have the review, the SCA said it saw submissions from third-party organisations like Stonewall, Translucent, Trans Safety Network, all those people, and said it raised serious concerns about the continued compliance of the EHRC with the Paris Principles, including its ability to conduct its mandate independent, to take positions in line with international standards, and its cooperation with civil society.
Yes, indeed. Remind me, what's the SCA?
Oh, sorry, I should have mentioned it. The SCA is like some kind of subcommittee as part of the Ganry.
I see.
Ganry is, for those who don't know, is like the big regulator sort of inside of the UN.
Yeah, kind of. It's the association of human rights groups, essentially.
Yeah, Global Association of NHRIs, which is like National Human Rights Institutes, maybe.
Yeah, that's right.
Completely guessed that on the fly, so...
Global Alliance of National Human Rights Organisations. Institutions.
From, I don't know, if it was GANRO, that'd be a bit...
Yeah, that would make sense. Yeah, GANRI. Global Alliance of National Human Rights Institutions. We should have looked that up before we started recording, but never mind. So the EHRC currently has an A grade with GANRI, but they're looking at downgrading that, aren't they?
Oh, yes. So at the moment, the EHRC has an A grade, which gives it the ability to contribute in Ganry discussions, and instead of just being there to spectate or look at what's happening rather than, and they were able to take part. If they were put to B grade, that'd be something different. That I think I saw on the original document where they did announce the special review. I think in the same meeting they downgraded Myanmar and Russia in that. So if we were to put, if the EHRC was downgraded, you see the kind of people we're being put next to in comparisons.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just strange to be, because for so long the government of many different political leanings liked to be so proud of its human rights record and say the UK leads the world on human rights for LGBT people and blah blah blah, and for a long time that was kind of true, but now it's not. We've fallen a long way in those rankings, and since that A grade is now under threat, that's what's prompted Baroness Faulkner to go, oh, heck, I better write something about this in the Telegraph, because lots of perfectly normal people read the Telegraph, of course.
Totally not everyone on the right wing who wants to take away rights.
Yeah, quite. It's, definitely a paper for very, very normal people here on Normal Island.
Could be worse, could be the Daily Mail.
Oh, God, yeah. Well, that's the thing. If it had been, I think...
They wouldn't have even bothered with a review. You'd have just gone,
Yeah.
nah, skip the review, that's pretty much decided it.
Yeah. Pretty much.
Saved us
No
all
point.
time.
If the Daily Mail are praising somebody, you've got to ask some questions about that somebody. But we did some democracy of our own, didn't we?
Oh yes, I was very curious to see what some other of our audience have said. I don't think it's been a while since I've brought what does our audience think into the pod. I keep meaning to bring it back. So in this occasion, we asked our audience if they think the EHRC will lose its A grade, and I'm not gonna lie, I didn't expect this number, but we got 69%
Nice.
said it will lose the A grade, 11% said it won't, and 19% said they didn't know. So it sounds like we've got a lot of hope in our audience on what might happen.
I mean, I don't know, because I think the EHRC losing its A grade is not the optimistic. Well, okay, so in a sense it is, because it might prompt them into action, but equally, it's not the best outcome. We're not here hoping that our human rights, the big human rights organisation for the UK, we're not actively hoping that it gets its A grade accreditation taken away by GANRI. That's not what we want in an ideal world, but it might, if that does happen, that might give some people a kick up their arse. But I doubt it, frankly. I'm not sure what meaningful difference that loss of an A grade is going to make for them. They'll just sit there thinking, well, everybody, they're discriminating against us because they don't like Britain. Yes, that's it. Or they'll find some way of playing the victim about it and pretending that they've been done dirty by activist groups and saying that they're the ones that caused this to happen.
Yeah, the thing is, it shouldn't have got to this point in the first place, isn't it? It's sort of, when it comes to the EHRC, it's just been dragging its heels, and it just, in a way, it's sort of, some people would consider it confirmation that they are as bad as I think the adults in the room have come in to say, no, you're right, they've been crap. But then again, it's sort of like, well, as you said, it shouldn't have got to this point, and it shouldn't have happened. And quite frankly, if it does get downgraded, the only way for it to get upgraded is for them to have a change of leadership.
Yes.
I think everyone's pretty much saying it at this point, because part of I looked at some of the recommendations that GANRI did put up for them to do in about a year before they then have to have this special review. One of them was look at the appointment system and see it's not independent, it's governmental political appointees.
Yep.
And that hasn't changed. We've seen people like Trans Safety Network has pointed it out. We've pointed it out over and over again. Well, everyone's pointed it out at this point now. Everyone but my nan.
And things are getting serious when the nans are getting involved. So let's hope they don't get that far. Because if we do end up getting to a point where all of the nans are involved, this government are done. We can but hope.
Yeah, though I think a lot of people say about the voting records of some nans or something. I don't know.
Well, quite. The Tories know that their core audience, the core of the people that usually vote Conservative, are older people. Which is why when a few years ago and they had that Alzheimer's tax, essentially, was just such a stupid, monumental mistake, but they still didn't lose the election over it. And it's just, what the hell is wrong with this country? Voting for these people who are openly reprehensible.
Exactly. But alas, that's straying from the EHRC, isn't it?
Sadly, somewhat, yes. That's probably enough of that, because I could witter on about governmental appointees where they have no place being until I'm blue in the face.
Alright, if you want more of that, you can check our past pods.
Yeah, many of them. Almost 100 now, which is a lot.
God.
However, let's one last thing we'll leave you with. And so for our final story this time, we're going to do some contextual analysis. back on the 22nd, which is last week as we record this, so as ever, we're absolutely rushing around and trying to break a story again very first, as we always do. Or not. But on that day, there were 2 different articles written in 2 different outlets, The Guardian and The Times, about the same subject that managed to draw wildly different conclusions. Why is this a surprise, you may ask? We know that the media landscape is intensely fractured when it comes to trans people, so why should this time be any different between these 2 outlets? Why, thank you, listener, that's an excellent point, and you're right. It's not a surprise at all, but I think this one in particular is a very good example of that fracture. Part of the problem that I can see is that nothing seems to have prompted either of these articles. There wasn't any announcement or hints at any kind of release date for the new school's guidance that we are still waiting for. Both of these articles must have been prompted by something, but it's not mentioned in either article what that was, so for all intents and purposes, it seems to have just come out of nowhere. Both articles do go over the same few points, like that Kemi Badenoch wanted to ban any social transition altogether, but the Attorney General Victoria Prentice advised that this would be unlawful, and that the guidance is said to take a presumption against children socially transitioning, which is concerning if it's true, but that's a mighty big if, partner. I do think it's interesting that they both chose to cover this, seemingly unprompted, on the same day. Now, both articles are making heavy use of the rumours suggest canard, so there must have been something that prompted this, but I am choosing not to panic over rumours and hearsay. So maybe someone else wrote an article about it. Maybe someone from the Mail got into a conversation in a lobby in Parliament. The Mail wrote an article about it, and now everybody else wants to write an article about it, and everybody just kind of piles on, because if they're covering it, we have to cover it as well. And now here we are covering it. So, in that sense, job done, but given that I couldn't quite tell where this had come from, I'm not sure it's a job well done as they might like to think.
They chased rumours, we then chased the rumours they have been chasing.
Yeah, exactly, and we're now chasing after rumours of rumours. And it's just, but with these 2 articles by themselves, right? One of them, The Guardian, the headline for which was "Guidance to Allow Transgender Children to Socially Transition in English Schools," whereas The Times' headline was "Trans Rules to Restrict Children on Gender Identity Changes at School." The Guardian had an interview with Jeff Barton, the General Secretary of the Association of School and College Leaders, which represents quite a lot of secondary school leaders, and he was talking about how the reports of a presumption against social transitioning would create further difficulties for staff, whereas The Times' article quoted Maya Forstater, who is not someone who, runs a high school or is involved in the teaching at a high school or is involved, providing support to a high school. She's a woman who, like 4 Women Scotland, lost a court case.
Oh, indeed, not even remotely qualified.
Quite, but, The Times, allegedly the paper of record for the UK, how are the mighty fallen, frankly? They used to be so reliable. Skewing a little bit conservative, as conservative people making a newspaper always were, but now it's
another Murdoch hate rap.
Yeah, it's only a couple of steps away from being the Mail, really, and I just find it fascinating that this amazingly fractured media landscape has produced so wildly different articles out of the same thing. And yes, fine, I get it that the papers are going to report things from their own individual stance, but, one of them seems to have done a little bit more legwork than the other.
Oh, exactly. I mean, one of them went to someone who actually had qualifications, and one who, decided to go and went, oh, look, it's another thing for our culture war agenda. Maya Forstater, person well known for saying, I want to spend £300,000 misgendering someone. And then you get Jeff Barton, person who works with teachers every day.
But then also, The Times also got some quotations from Bayswater Support, which, according to The Times, offers help to parents of transgender children. But according to Trans Safety Network, which openly promote a conversion therapy manual on their own website. So again, it's just, the problem is with rumours, is that you can pull any narrative you want out of it. And that's exactly what's happened here. And I just thought that was a good example. And wow, I'm still just bowled over by the Times' article on this, frankly, because it is just, they're still saying the quiet part fairly quietly, but, it's still there, just really just beneath the surface is that hatred. That, almost that incitement against trans people, that kind of presumption. Their presumption against is that they have got an editorial presumption against the idea that trans people are real and legitimate and we're not making it up kind of thing. Their entire presumption is that trans people are all problematic sex offenders, every single one of us.
Yeah, essentially their presumption is that their stance in presumption is just to push trans kids into conversion therapy.
Yeah,
essentially.
That's exactly
that's essentially what they're saying, in my personal opinion, on that one. Because they're like, if you're not going to allow social transitioning, you're saying you need to stay cis, which is detransition through and through. It's just that, isn't it?
That's exactly it. It just, you can see exactly where it's come from. Well, you can't see where it's come from, that's the problem. But you can see the seams, the different lines that have been drawn between. And that's not to say that The Guardian are a perfect paper when it comes to reporting trans issues, because they have their own problems as well. As we have reported, as we've said many times on this podcast, there have been several occasions where The Guardian have not, this ain't it, Chief.
Dodgy towards trans people.
Super dodgy. But do check both of them out. Obviously, try and find, an internet archive rather than giving clicks to the Times. I think they're fully subscription model online now anyway, so...
Yeah, they probably stick a few ads there every now and again, but we'll try to do some sticky links for you on the description as well, as it'll be inevitable on that front.
I mean, that's how I got it, that's... I'm not giving them any money. But, so that's the news, and that's our show. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for sticking with us. And you're looking great today, by the way. I know it's cold, but, you really suit being all wrapped up. So, yes, if you like, you can find a lot of our written stuff and a couple of extra little articles that didn't make it into a podcast on our website, whatthetrans.com. You can, of course, find us on Twitter or X, Twix, I guess, at What the Trans, Facebook, of course, What the Trans. And if you'd like to catch that Doctor Who-centric episode a little early, and all of the Who the Trans episodes as soon as they're ready, you can find us on...
Check out our Patreon.
Yes, indeed. Find us on Patreon, obviously. What the Trans, that's us.
What the Trans. And also, if you want to check out our Instagram, we can see some lovely photos, and our threads. We've always got some good stuff on there. Yep. We're mainly posting. But yeah, as you said.
But yes, thank you very much, and we'll see you next time. Goodbye. This episode of What the Trans was written and produced by Ashleigh Talbot and Alyx Bedwell, and edited by Ben Swithin. And we would love to thank our producer-level Patreons, who are Ashleigh,
Oscar Aitken Park,
Matty B,
Squidzina,
Setcat,
Jane,
Roberto de Prunk,
Rose Absolute,
Sarah,
Catherine Halkett,
Sina,
Kiki T,
Derek,
Sky Killane,
Eric Woodman,
B,
Jude,
Monsieur Squirrel,
Fergus Evans,
Anubis a Jackal,
Kamina,
Brandon Craig,
Jenny,
Break the System,
Sean Phillips,
Heidi Reardon,
Ezra,
Sophia LeSixth,
Lentil,
Philippa Teproge,
Alethea Aurora,
Sadie Chagall,
Clara Vulumi,
Amelia,
twitch.tv/K-Space-Gaming,
Tabitha Joe Cox, aka Candy,
Zeph,
Fiona McDonald,
Tariq Kuso H,
Murgatroyd,
Ontologically Unjust,
Stella,
Cindagosa,
Rebecca Prentice,
Crazy Richard,
Dan Oblivion,
Florence Stanley,
Helen _.
Welcome back to Get Back in the Skitchen. Today we'll be baking cranberry sauce. Yummy.
Nick Ross,
Alice Chalkley,
Melody Nix,
Fiona Punchard,
John,
Nick Duffy,
CB Bailey,
Gordon Cameron,
Ted Delphos,
Wen Riverup,
Vic Parsons,
Tila Wild,
Patreon user,
Vic Kelly,
Catherine,
Sabrina McVeigh,
Cassius Adair,
Melissa Brooks,
Ian Kuma,
Karakan 12,
April Heller,
Sophie Lewis,
Alexandra Lilly,
Claire Scott,
Ariadne Penner,
Lauren and Irons,
Bernard's Pink Jellybean,
Lanus.
Chris Hubley.
Thank you to you all.
Thank you.